We learned two things this weekend in the Big Ten. First of all, Penn State is not everything that we thought they could be, and Ohio State, at least the second best team in the Big Ten. Let's hash all that out right here. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I am Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. And if you've been with us every day, welcome back, of course. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you could go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. So Penn State is not better than Ohio State. That we know. They still have Michigan coming up. We're going to hash this through. I think they're missing one ingredient and one ingredient only. Meanwhile, crazy storylines throughout the rest of the Big Ten. We'll get to that. And we'll have our Big Ten top 10. You'll want to hang around for that as well. Be sure to subscribe down below the little black button. Follow, like Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way, you'll get this episode as soon as it becomes available. Difference, I thought, between Penn State and Ohio State on Saturday. Of course, Ohio State won that game 20-12. And by the way, thank you to all of you who joined us live on Saturday night. That was something we've been going live throughout the entire season, and it's been a lot of fun. I always appreciate that. But the Buckeyes have Marvin Harrison Jr., and Penn State doesn't. That's it. I think that's the difference between these two teams. Look, Penn State had this date circled on their calendar for months. You'll remember last year that Penn State beat everybody on their schedule, including their bowl opponent, except for Michigan and Penn State. And they felt supremely confident when they rolled into Columbus, Ohio this weekend that they thought they were going to win that football game. They had bigger aspirations than just the Big Ten. It's a really good football team. They should have those kind of aspirations. This is James Franklin's best team and deepest team that he's ever had. And it was an interesting game. It was kind of a slow roll, and that was because of all the defense that was going on at first. These are two of the top three defenses in the country. And so Kyle McCord of the Buckeyes and Penn State's Drew Aller, they were off the mark a lot on their passes in this football game. But it seemed like that Ohio State was just a little bit better, and they slowly edged ahead in this close game. And then, boom, when everybody looked up at the end of the day, and by the way, those of you watching on YouTube on the video, CJ Stroud there, it came back to root on his school this weekend, the quarterback of the Texans, former Buckeye. But nonetheless, this was a game that just kind of slowly kind of crept in Ohio State's favor. And then, boom, Marvin Harrison had 11 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. And all of a sudden, Ohio State wins the football game. That's pretty much how it went this weekend. And both teams did a great job defensively on this one. Penn State's done a lot of good things this year. And I know they're disappointed in this game, but this is a very good football team. But the one thing they've been criticized about, and I think it's fair now, their lack of air attack, their lack of vertical offense. In fact, James Franklin was asked about a week and a half ago at a press conference, why didn't just chuck it downfield, quote unquote, I think was the question from the reporter. He didn't like that at all, by the way. He says, we just don't chuck it. We have a game plan, for crying out loud. But many started to whisper that Drew Aller couldn't throw the deep ball, which I think is nonsense. Drew Aller has all the talent that any other quarterback has. And he's young, and he's still learning. And something that we pointed out on previous podcasts last week, in fact, you can go back and listen. In fact, I recommend you do go back. If you missed any of our podcasts last week leading up to this game, check them out here, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube as well. But one thing I pointed out, as well as Drew Aller started out this season, he had two previous road games that he didn't do well in those road games. And they were Northwestern and Illinois. Those aren't the two best teams in the Big Ten, and we'll talk about those two schools later on here on this podcast. So he does not perform as well on the road. A lot of quarterbacks don't. And this isn't Northwestern and Illinois. This was Ohio State. That's a pretty intimidating place to play. Although the kid is from Ohio and grew up rooting for the Buckeyes, but I'm sure there was some incentive for him to do well. But trust me, he can throw the deep ball. The problem in Happy Valley is that he doesn't have anybody that can go deep. There isn't anybody with breakaway speed. There isn't anybody. They don't have a defense or a wide receiver to take the top off the defense the way Ohio State has Marvin Harrison Jr. By the way, Ohio State also has Emeka Egbuka, but he didn't play in this game. So it was just Marvin Harrison Jr. There are others, but he was the key. So, and granted, few teams have a Marvin Harrison Jr., but you do need an explosive, speedy receiver. And Penn State has that on the menu now. They have got to get that to take yet that next step. I mean, they've come such a long way, but if they want to go further and they want to not just compete with Michigan, Ohio State, but beat Michigan, Ohio State, that's what they're going to need. They're going to need some incredible speed on the outside to go deep. They still have another chance here to prove themselves, right? They still have the Michigan Wolverines at Beaver Stadium, I remind you, on November 11th. Now, bad news is Michigan still looks awesome, incredible. We'll get to them in just a minute as well. And before we move on from this game, let's give a little bit of credit here to the Ohio State defense. You know, Penn State was 0 for its first 15 third down conversions. They got one late in the game, 1 for 16. Drew Aller, like I just built him up saying he can't hit passes. He was only 18 of 42 in this game and a touchdown. All the credit in the world going to the Ohio State defense in this one. And if you didn't see the game, there was a key moment, and right after Chop Robinson got hurt, which we all hope that he's okay. He's got a really big, bright future. But the game was tied at 3 at that point, and it looked like Penn State just broke the momentum their way. Kyle McCord fumbled away a ball, and then Curtis Jacobs got the scoop and score for 59 yards. The momentum switch. Penn State takes the lead. Everybody's going nuts. And then, there's a flag on the other side of the field. And Kalen King had grabbed Marvin Harrison Jr. They called defensive holding, automatic first down for the Buckeyes. The turnover, the score, it's all null and void. And then the Buckeyes completed that, which was a 13-play drive to score a touchdown. And that was the key. That the game flipped. Game flipped right there. That's how close this was. But both defenses did a great job. And again, I think the main thing that Penn State needs, they got to get somebody to stretch the defense, and they don't have it. They got the running backs, they got the quarterback, they got a great offensive line. They're missing that one piece, and they got a great defense too. So, and they got great special teams. So that's what they need. And maybe they got a young freshman that's sitting here redshirting, or maybe somebody they need like a 4 or 5 star receiver on a recruiting trail. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that game. I would love to hear from you on YouTube or on Twitter at Talk Big Ten. If you want to hit me up, and go ahead and hit me there at Talk Big Ten as well. Love to hear from you all the time on that stuff. As a matter of fact, I didn't have that up on the screen. There we go. Talk Big Ten. So with that in mind, let's move on and talk about some other games going on in the Big Ten this weekend that caught my attention. Of course, Saturday night, we watched the Michigan State game, and I thought, other than a couple of mistakes, Michigan looked about as perfect as it could. Those first 4 drives in the first half, long drives, beautiful scoring drives, distributing the ball everywhere. Blake Corum scored his 13th touchdown, his 44th of his career. Everything was rolling. Roman Wilson caught a touchdown pass. That's his 10th. He leads the Big Ten in scoring there. Colston Loveland had his first multiple touchdown game of the season with 2 touchdowns. And J.J. McCarthy was just about perfect. They botched that last drive at the end of the first half, right? They had some movement, and the clock ran out on them, and they were right there at the goal line and didn't score. They get the 49 up. Did any of you think that when Michigan scored to make it 48-0, anybody out there think, hey, this is a rivalry game against Michigan State? Let's go for 2 here. Let's put the 50 burger on the scoreboard. That would be 3 weeks in a row 3 games in a row that they would score 50. Anybody think they were going to do that? They didn't. Obviously, they kicked the extra point. They win 49-0. That's good enough. But the thought entered my mind. I'm wondering if it entered your mind as well. Also, a side note on Spygate, in case you missed the extra details going into the weekend after that story broke, I think it was, Wednesday and Thursday it broke. Friday, we got the name of Connor Stallions. He's the football analyst. He has been suspended with pay by the athletic department. And, of course, Jim Harbaugh has denied any knowledge or denies that he directed anybody to do anything against NCAA rules regarding advanced scouting on location at an opponent that is on your schedule this year. It's an outdated rule that was put in 1994 to try and save money. But that's ridiculous. These schools are making $70 million a year. If you want to send a scout to a game, let's get with it. But anyway, look, if he did it, there might be some trouble here. We'll see if the NCAA has a case or not. We'll find out. But that's the latest. Connor Stallions is the person of interest in this investigation, and wanted to make that bring that to your attention. All your comments, again, welcome at Twitter, at Talk Big Ten, or on YouTube as well. We got the best of the rest around the rest of the Big Ten as we continue on Locked On Big Ten. Athletic Brewing Company has absolutely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They're full of flavor, well-crafted, and they're just like a full-strength beer. In fact, I have some right here. Yeah, right there. Yeah, Athletic. Pretty good stuff. All kinds of different flavors that they have. It's great tasting, award-winning. It actually beats out full-strength beers in global competitions all the time. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, sours, more. They're experimenting with new flavors all the time. And they're fit for all times. You can drink them anytime. Again, non-alcoholic, no hangover. You could be watching your kids' game drinking it. Nobody will even look at you. It's non-alcoholic, right? You could have it at a workout. You can have it working on your yard. It's great. Just check it out. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. And first-time customers use the code Locked On, and you get 15% off your first online order. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Again, the website again, athleticbrewing.com. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Okay, so the best of the rest everywhere else around the Big Ten. First of all, congratulations to Rutgers. I keep telling you here on these podcasts that look, a lot of attention is spent on Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State. Rutgers, Greg Schiano, the job he is doing there is phenomenal. They win over the weekend at Bloomington on the road, 31-14. That is their 6th win of the season. They are now bowl eligible. It's the first time since 2014 they've gotten the 6-win mark, with more to come, I think. And Gavin Wimsatt, their quarterback, he's an interesting player to watch, a tremendous athlete. Not going to beat you with his arm, but he will beat you with his legs. And he scored 3 touchdowns and rushed for 143 yards against the Hoosier defense this weekend. And the Hoosiers, look, they're trying to figure out their offense. They're trying to figure out who the quarterback's going to be. They've got a new offensive coordinator, and their special teams let them down this weekend. They had a block punt return for a touchdown. I think another punt return for a touchdown. It just is not going well right now as they're trying to go through some growing pains and figure some things out. But on the other side, Rutgers, they're moving. Greg Schiano, congratulations, bowl eligible at Rutgers. Nebraska, Matt Rule starting to get things turned around here. They're winning football games at Nebraska. They beat Northwestern 17-9. Heinrich Haarberg, he's another one that kind of like Gavin Wimsatt isn't going to really beat you with his arm. He's more of a run-first kind of guy. In fact, he had 2 interceptions in this game. Although I was watching it, and he had one of the prettiest passes I've ever seen, a 44-yarder to Malachi Coleman for a touchdown. So he can do it. He can do it. And let's give a shout out to the Nebraska defense that had 8 sacks and 13 tackles for loss in that game against Northwestern. Just a tremendous effort there. Minnesota. Did you see the Minnesota-Iowa game? This was something else. Okay, so first of all, Vegas had this over-under at 30 and a half, somewhere around there. It was the lowest in major college football in like almost 20 years, like lower than Army Navy. It was 31 points. And they hit the under. That's Iowa football for you. And Minnesota with a pretty good defense. Minnesota wins the game 12-10. But with Minnesota leading 12-10, with about 90 seconds to go, they got to punt the ball. And they punt it to Cooper DeJean, who's probably the best punt return man in the Big Ten. Although Daquan Hardy at Penn State isn't too bad either. But DeJean returns it. He made it was kind of awkward. So the ball was short. It was going to bounce in front of him, and he was going to let it go. And he was pointing to the ball, so his teammates could see it. So the ball didn't hit them, and they ended up, get a turnover or anything like that. But then he's waving with his left arm kind of out to the side, like get away. But that was deemed an improper fair catch signal that you're supposed to have above your head. So after the touchdown, Iowa crowd's going nuts. They think they've taken the lead. They think they've gotten another ugly win because that's how they do it at Iowa. And they called it back. They said the improper fair catch signal is not a penalty. It's just a dead ball at that point. So instead of like a 54-yard touchdown, now they're 54 yards away. They got to start with the offense. And the offense stalled, and Deacon Hill ended up throwing an interception at the end. So it was pretty exciting, though. I was watching it live. But some Iowa fans were hot. They were throwing stuff down on the field and everything. But I guess by the letter of the law, they called the right call there. And did you know that PJ Fleck has never beaten Iowa? So he and Minnesota, they get the win. In fact, they haven't won at Kinnick since 1999. PJ Fleck pointed out, hey, man, I was in high school then. That's how long ago that was. So it was a pretty exciting game for a 12-10 game. It was like a car wreck. You couldn't take your eyes off. I had to watch it. There was no scoring. They're battling each other. And it had kind of a flurry there at the end that was pretty exciting. And then speaking of exciting, how about the Wisconsin Badgers? They ended up beating Illinois 25-21. But that's not the story. Illinois had this game. It was 21-7 Illinois at home. And then Wisconsin scores 18 unanswered points to win the game. And they get Braden Locke got the winning touchdown pass with 27 seconds to go. The 18 unanswered points of the fourth quarter. Wisconsin ends up winning 25-21. Great day for Wisconsin. A very bad day for Illinois as they just can't get it together. Illinois had the big win, the last second win last week. Now they suffer a last-second loss this week. And what these games involving Wisconsin and Iowa does, things are really tightening back up in the Big Ten West. Iowa was in the driver's seat, but then they lose. Wisconsin wins. Wisconsin is 3-1 in the conference. Iowa is 3-2 in the conference with a win over Wisconsin, I might add. Overall, Iowa 6-2, Wisconsin 5-2. This one looks like it's going down to the wire. The Hawkeyes are so banged up. They got a bye coming up. That'll be good for them. And Wisconsin has a pretty tough task. They're at home, but they host Ohio State. Maybe they can hope that Ohio State has a little bit of a hangover from the big game against Penn State and now traveling on the road to face the Badgers. Maybe they can make something happen. Maybe. But that's on the schedule coming up. Things getting very, very interesting there in the Big Ten West, no doubt about it. Coming up in a moment, I'm going to share with you the top 10 things I saw this weekend. Put it in a top 10 list. I'll share it with you in just a moment. And also remind you that Locked On College Football Kickoff live every Friday on this channel, on this Locked On Big Ten channel, on YouTube, and all the other Locked On College channels. We all carry it live at 11 a.m. Eastern on Fridays, 11 to noon. And if you miss it live, you can catch it taped later on. It's there for you, getting you ready for the weekend. But wanted to make sure you were aware of that. I also want to thank all of you for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day, for those that do. And meanwhile, be sure to subscribe, the little black button down below as we make our push to 4,000. Isn't that incredible? We were at 1,200 when we took over this channel. Now we're going to be 4,000 pretty soon with your help, of course. And more importantly, I would like to ask you to share this with somebody that you know is a Big Ten fan or an alum that might like this. And more and more people are discovering this Lockdown Big Ten channel every single day on the podcast every single day. And that's how we grow. You guys are already in. You're already in part of the club. You can help us grow, and we would really be appreciative. So you can subscribe, share, follow, and like Lockdown Big Ten. That just helps us out tremendously. All right, as promised, my observations, top 10 observations in the Big Ten, coming up on Lockdown Big Ten in just 1 minute. I want to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And it's just you against the numbers. It's really easy. Instead of battling against other players and pros and people that are, doing it professionally. Look, you just pick more than or less than with a group of players, 2 to 6 players, for example. And their stat projections, if they hit them over or under, and that's how you picked it, or more than or less than, that's how you win. I'll give you an example. We got Monday Night Football, right? 49ers and Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins always struggles on Monday night prime time. Maybe set him at 2 touchdowns and take less than and compare it with Brock Purdy or CMC, who's I think going to play, but he's hurt. Maybe his stats will be a little lower. So maybe go, less than with both of those guys. Just an idea. A lot of fun. You can amaze your friends with your knowledge and, of course, your winnings as well. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. So let's get into it a little bit here. I'm going to put up a list on the video. If you're listening on the audio only podcast, I will try and explain in detail. These are just my top 10 observations of the weekend. And I put an honorable mention, Cooper DeJean from Iowa, that punt return for a touchdown that didn't count. It was just a spectacular moment, but it didn't count, so it didn't make the list. So let me put it here on the screen, and we will take a look at this and start with number 10. I'm going to give a shout out to Nebraska defensive lineman Nash Hutmacher. He had 2.5 sacks, also 2.5 tackles for loss in that game against Northwestern. Just a spectacular job by the Huskers defense throughout the day. And, we were just talking about them just a moment ago. The whole team I could have put up here, 8 sacks and 13 tackles for loss on the day. At number 9, let's put this up there. I got Wisconsin running back Braylon Allen, part of that huge comeback. 29 carries, 145 yards and a touchdown, averaged 5 yards a carry. Look, air attack, dairy raid attack, whatever you want to call it. No, this is old-fashioned Wisconsin football. 29 carries by your lead running back, 5 yards a carry. That's what Wisconsin does. I hope Luke Fickell doesn't move too far from that in the future. And so at number 8, just part of that same game, Wisconsin, 18 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to eliminate a 21-7 deficit against Illinois and win the game. They get my number 8 spot on my top 10 observations of the week. At number 7, I'm going to give that spot to Rutgers quarterback Gavin Wimsatt, who ran for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Indiana defense over the weekend. Next, at number 6, Minnesota wide receiver Daniel Jackson. 7 catches, 101 yards on the day against Iowa in a game that featured no offense on both sides. He cracks 100 yards receiving. We've got to mention him. So we put him here at number 6. At number 5, Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns to Colston Loveland. He was just about perfect on the day. Just an incredible job. He's just absolutely on cruise control with Michigan in that game against Michigan State. Elsewhere, I want to give a shout out to that Michigan defense, which actually threw the shutout. 9 tackles for loss against Michigan State. Very impressive day, and didn't give up any points. At number 3, a shout out to the Penn State defense. Even though they lost the game to Ohio State, that was a pretty good effort out there. 9 tackles for loss versus Ohio State on the day. At number 2, Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison. Got to give him a shout out for his 11 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown. And then overall, the number one thing I saw over the weekend, the Ohio State defense versus Penn State. That Ohio State-Penn State game, that was the thing this weekend. So that's my top 10 list. You can argue with it, agree with it, like it, whatever you want. Hit me up with comments at Talk Big Ten on Twitter or here on YouTube as well. And there you have it. That is our top 10 list of the week. Again, many ways to comment. I just told you, Talk Big Ten on Twitter. That's the number 10. Our website, of course, let me put that back up there. Those of you watching there, here it is on the bottom scroll. TalkBig10number10.com is our website. And of course, you can hit me up here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe down below. Follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Of course, they're released first thing in the morning, Monday through Friday. And don't forget, we go live on the weekends too after the big games. Now, I invite you to check out our friends at Locked On Sports Today and their podcast for the latest on everything going on in sports. I want you to have a great day. Thank you for checking us out today, and I can't wait till we meet again right here on Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman.